Ibrahim Traoré was praying at Thomas Sankara's grave when he noticed something glinting beneath the headstone. In that moment, the fate of Burkina Faso and all of Africa would change forever. The military cemetery on the outskirts of Ouagadougou was silent in the early morning light. Dew still clung to the sparse grass between the modest graves, and the air carried the earthy scent of the approaching rainy season. Traoré had arrived as the first rays of sun breached the horizon, preferring to visit before the day's heat settled over the capital and before his official duties demanded his attention. These monthly pilgrimages to Sankara's grave had become a ritual for Traoré. Since assuming the presidency, he'd dismissed his security detail at the cemetery entrance with firm instructions to wait. These moments were private, almost sacred, not performances for public consumption or political theater, but genuine acts of reverence for the man whose vision had inspired his own journey to leadership. Thomas Sankara, the charismatic revolutionary who changed the name of the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, land of incorruptible people, was killed 35 years ago in a coup organized by his former friend Blaise Compaoré, with the help of France and other Western powers. For decades, Sankara's body lay in an unmarked grave, and his name was almost completely erased from official history. His legacy was purposefully hidden. It wasn't until Compaoré's fall from power that his remains were properly reburied, identified through DNA testing, and a simple memorial was built. The headstone bore his name, the years he had lived and died, 1949 to 1987, and his famous quote, "While revolutionaries as individuals can be killed, ideas cannot." Traoré bowed his head and kneeled in front of the grave at 34 at the time of his death. He was younger than Sankara, and following in such heavy footsteps often felt too much. "I'm trying to follow your way, Capitan," he whispered, using the loving name Burkinabe that was still used for Sankara. But now the problems are worse than ever. After 8 months in office, Traoré was under more and more pressure. Western countries put limits on his economy because they were worried about his nationalist policies and growing links with Russia and China. France, which used to be Traoré's colonial master, cut off development aid after he got rid of their military forces. The IMF also threatened to stop giving him money unless he made structural reforms that would give foreign corporations back control of the country's resources. Every day brought new problems, new threats, and attempts to weaken his government's efforts to reclaim real power. He spent some nights alone in the presidential residence, which still had the marks of colonial rule on its architecture. As Traoré got up, he thought about whether real freedom was even possible in a global system that was meant to keep things the same. As he looked around, he saw a shiny metal object reflecting the early morning sun from under the edge of the headstone. As the tray got closer, the thin layer of red dirt that had built up around the base of the monument was brushed away. Carefully placed fingers found a small metal object partly buried in the ground. Traoré worked it out of the ground. It was an old key that was a little rusted but had a unique shape and an odd pattern cut into its head. Traoré saw something else. The ground under the tombstone looked like it had been purposely moved and then carefully put back in place. He dug with his hands, scooping up the loose dirt as he went. 6 inches down, he hit something solid. A metal box about the size of a thick book was buried under Sankara's tombstone. He became more and more excited. Traoré took it out of its hiding place. The box was made of stainless steel and was sealed against the elements. It had no marks on it except for a small engraving of the Burkina Faso flag. The key he had in his hand fit perfectly into the lock, though his fingers were a little shaky. When Traoré opened the waterproof container, he saw a leather-bound journal with a folded piece of paper on top. The paper was yellowing from age, but the journal itself was still in perfect condition. Traoré carefully opened the journal and saw that it was written in the famous, bold handwriting of Thomas Sankara, who was taught in schools all over the country. "If you are reading this, you have found out what I could not tell you in real life. This journal contains the truth about our country's wealth, our relationship with the West, and a way to true independence. It is meant only for a patriot who puts Burkina Faso before themselves, their comfort, and their own safety. If you are not this person, please rebury this box and don't talk about it with anyone. If you are this person, may these words lead you where I couldn't go. For the country or death we will win." The note was signed simply Thomas and dated October 14, 1987, the day before Sankara's assassination. Traoré's hands trembled as he carefully lifted the journal from the box. The implications were staggering. Sankara, had hidden this document knowing his life was in danger, anticipating his own murder, preserving knowledge he deemed too dangerous to share openly. Distant voices jolted Trout back to the present. His security detail was calling for him. Quickly he wrapped the journal and note in the oil cloth, placed them back in the box, and concealed it inside his jacket. The disturbed soil around the headstone he smoothed over as best he could. "I'm coming," he called out, rising to his feet. As he walked away from the grave, he felt the weight of the box against his chest, a physical burden that matched the weight of responsibility, now pressing down upon him. Back at the presidential palace, secure in his private study with great care, Traoré opened the notebook. The first post was made 3 years before Sankara's death, soon after he took power. "Today I learned something that has completely shocked me. What I thought was worse than I thought. The French lied about the results of their geological surveys before we got our freedom, when they said they showed that our country didn't have many mineral resources. The real surveys that my friend in Paris did everything to get to me show huge gold, uranium, manganese, and zinc resources that could change the future of our country." Page after page of details. What Sankara found: Western forces have been lying for a long time. The deliberate lack of growth in African countries, the complicated web of financial systems that are meant to keep former colonies poor and dependent, even though they are naturally rich. One of the most damning things about Sankara's journal was that he had carefully kept copies of secret agreements made by puppet leaders before him. Geological maps that show resource deposits that were never officially recognized, transcripts of talks between French officials talking about how to keep control of West Africa's resources in 1984. A transcript of a conversation between French government officials and mining executives shows that the key is to keep the idea of scarcity alive. One ministry official said, "If these countries knew the true extent of their mineral wealth, they would demand better terms and maybe even nationalization. Our strategy must be to release information gradually, while always maintaining the narrative that extraction requires our expertise, capital, and technology." An executive replied, "The situation with Sankara is concerning. He's asking too many questions and demanding access to original survey data. Perhaps it's time to explore other options within his inner circle." Then came the part that made Traoré's blood boil. Sankara's growing awareness of the conspiracy against him. "I am now certain that my days are numbered. Blah one has been meeting with French officials, and my security detail has seen some strange moves. The Western media has been calling me a dictator, a communist, and a danger to stability. These are the same signs that were present before Lumumba, Olympia, and Nkrumah's deaths. Everyone who dared to hope for an Africa that was truly free." The last few pages had what Sankara had written in his note: a full plan for